Welcome to the deep dive. We are jumping into a situation today that I think almost everyone experiences, but, well, very few people really handle well. It's that, that real world challenge of planning anything shared. It could be a vacation, a big birthday party, or, I don't know, even just a complicated group dinner with friends.
Right, with peers, with colleagues.
Exactly. And the problem is when, or you at least have strong suspicion that the individual budgets in the group are just completely mismatched.
It is the invisible pressure point, isn't it? In almost every social planning scenario. I mean, we're generally pretty good at handling our own, personal spreadsheets, our own monthly budgets.
Yeah, we can track our expenses.
For sure. But the second we try to merge that personal financial map with another person's, or, and this is so much worse, an entire group's, the conversation just grinds to a halt.
It gets so awkward.
So awkward. It gets sticky, and sometimes it just completely breaks the plan. The whole thing just falls apart.
And that's why we were so fascinated by some material we found on this. It's a really detailed analysis that focuses not on the numbers themselves, but actually on the language we use.
The communication.
It's a two-part special that moves way beyond just personal money management and into this really complex, often fraught area of shared financial planning. So our mission today is, well, it's surgical. We're going to extract the precise communication skills.
The vocabulary,
the tactical sequencing, all the things that let us navigate this difference in spending power, gracefully and without causing offense.
And what's really, I think, revolutionary about the approach we analyzed is the core insight it brings to the table. In these shared budget scenarios, your financial competence is actually secondary to your conversational competence.
That's such a good way of putting it.
Well, you might know exactly how much disposable income you have down to the last penny, but if you don't have the right words to convey your limits, or maybe the empathy to hear someone else's limit,
the plan just collapses.
It collapses. The entire dynamic hinges on achieving this kind of radical honesty while still maintaining respect and a sense of collaboration. The real goal is to turn what could be a huge conflict into a mutual, co-created solution.
So if you came here today looking for stock tips, you are definitely in the wrong place. This is all about financial diplomacy. We are going to analyze a very specific, almost real-life conversation.
A blueprint, really.
It's a true blueprint for budget negotiation. And we're going to break down the essential words and phrases that, made that positive outcome possible. Because ultimately what we want is for you to walk away with a sort of ready-made script.
A toolkit.
A practice language toolkit for the next time your friend suggests a destination that you absolutely love, but in your heart you just financially can't justify.
So we're moving beyond just knowing what we can afford, and we're trying to gain the fluency to discuss it in a way that, well, it preserves the relationships and it maintains dignity for everyone involved. This is really about communication strategy for shared budgets.
Okay, so let's start with the specific building blocks, the actual tools, because the research we looked at is pretty unambiguous on this. Vagueness is the absolute enemy of financial honesty.
So true.
Saying maybe when you really mean no, or giving these vague excuses, it just creates confusion. And it can even cause offense, right? It makes the other person think you're just being difficult on purpose.
All right, or that you're not interested, which might not be the case at all. The source material identifies 3 key phrases that act as anchors, in a way. They're designed to make these sensitive conversations structurally smoother.
I like that, structurally smoother.
Well, that's the critical distinction. We're not looking for, vague filler words. We're looking for conversational shock absorbers, language that frames the whole discussion around shared goals and existing constraints, rather than, say, individual failure or some kind of deficit.
So these phrases, they're polite, they sound professional, and I guess most importantly, they're solution-oriented. Okay, let's dive right into the first one. This one is arguably the most powerful for turning what feels like a financial burden into more of a group activity. And that phrase is to pitch in.
It is a phenomenal phrasal verb. I mean, at its most basic level, it just means to contribute money or effort, to join in to help with something. But when you really look at its function inside a financial discussion, its depth becomes so apparent.
It's like an engine for collaboration.
It is. That's the perfect way to describe it.
So tell me a little more about that collaborative function. Why is saying pitch in so much better than, I don't know, something more direct like we all need to contribute money?
Well, the language itself implies teamwork and equity. When you ask everyone to pitch in, you immediately diffuse the tension that comes from, say, a unilateral expense. You're shifting the focus from, this is an obligation you have to meet, to, this is a contribution we are all making toward a shared goal.
It standardizes the action. It's not one person asking another for money.
Exactly. Everyone is moving in the same direction. The examples that were provided in the sources really highlight this. The classic financial use is pretty straightforward, right? For our managers leaving present, everyone from the office decided to pitch in 10 pounds.
It's clear, it's communal, and the amount is defined. Everyone knows the deal.
Right. It feels fair.
That example is helpful because it sets a clear standard. But what I found even more insightful was the analysis of its non-monetary use. The idea that you can substitute effort for money, that's where the real dignity protection comes in, isn't it?
Absolutely. Think about the other example they gave. If we all pitch in with the cleaning, we'll be finished in half an hour.
Right. No money involved there.
None at all. And that shows that the core meaning of the phrase is about contributing resources, not just currency. So if a person is on a tight budget and they can't pitch in the full financial amount, they can legitimately offer to pitch in with planning or with driving or researching cheaper options or cooking.
The effort becomes their contribution.
Exactly. Their effort becomes their currency in that context.
So if I'm the friend with a more limited budget and I hear someone suggest we all pitch in, it instantly makes me feel like I have a valid way to participate without feeling shame. It kind of confirms my value in the group isn't just tied to the size of my wallet.
Yes.
I can say something like, look, I can't pitch in $50, but I can definitely pitch in by cooking all the dinners for the trip.
And that is the subtle but profoundly powerful psychological payoff. You are not accepting charity and you're not being pushed to the sidelines. You are still an active, contributing member of the team. And this is so crucial for long-term relationships.
Why not?
Because constant acceptance of financial help, even when it's well-intentioned, can start to erode a person's sense of self-reliance over time. It can create an imbalance. Pitch in provides a way to creatively substitute your contribution, which validates both you as a person and the shared goal you're working toward.
So it sets up the relationship for future success, basically.
Yeah.
You're collaborating on the solution, not just, complaining about the problem.
Precisely. Which brings us to the second phrase. This one is all about establishing your own credibility and foresight, especially when you're the one with the budget issue. The phrase is to set aside.
To set aside.
It means to save or reserve something, usually time or money, but it can be other things, for a very specific, deliberate purpose.
This one feels vital, especially when you're dealing with friends who maybe have a bit more spending power. If you just tell them, I haven't saved enough for this luxury trip, there's this underlying unspoken question, isn't there? It's like they might be thinking, well, why didn't you start saving when we first talked about this months ago?
And that unspoken question carries a hint of judgment. It implies a lack of responsibility. Using the phrase to set aside proactively counters that judgment before it can even form. Its utility is in demonstrating your seriousness and your foresight regarding the goal.
So you're showing you were on board.
Exactly. If you can honestly say, I had been trying to set aside money every week for this trip, even if those funds had to be used for something else later, you communicate that your current constraint is circumstantial. It's external and unavoidable, not a failure of your planning or a lack of desire to be there.
So it's basically a shield against the accusation of being irresponsible. The money was managed. The plan was in place. Something just got in the way.
Yes. The source material really emphasizes how this one phrase moves the conversation from being about reactive spending patterns to proactive financial management. A classic example they use is, I try to set aside a little money from every paycheck for my emergency fund.
Right. That communicates a planned, deliberate action. It shows the money wasn't just, spent frivolously on coffees and things. It was reserved.
It was reserved. And when we look at the non-financial context, the meaning gets even deeper. He had to set aside his personal feelings to make a fair decision as a judge. That definition of reservation is key. When you set aside funds for a shared goal, you are showing that you prioritize the group over your own immediate personal gratification. That shows commitment.
Okay, so when we get to our case study later, the character Chloe uses this phrase. She isn't just saying she failed to save.
Not at all. She's confirming, I reserved this money for this specific shared purpose with you, but an unforeseen emergency hijacked that reserve. It's an explanation that protects her reputation as a reliable and committed planner.
And without that little piece of nuance, the other person, Liam, He might just assume she wasn't serious about the trip at all.
He might. It makes the budget issue a temporary external disruption, a crisis, rather than a permanent internal character flaw. And that gives the other person space to offer empathy instead of suspicion.
Okay, that makes sense.
Which brings us to the third essential phrase, which is the one that actually delivers the financial news, but does it politely and professionally. The phrase is, on a tight budget.
Right. I think most of us have used some version of this, but the sources are very specific about this phrasing. Why is on a tight budget the optimal choice? Why is it better than just saying, I'm broke, or I really can't afford that?
The phrasing is superior because it's neutral, it's defined, and it's structured. Saying, I'm on a tight budget, avoids emotional language. It avoids defensiveness. The word budget itself implies that an organized financial plan actually exists.
Oh, okay.
It's just a constraint, yes, but it's a constraint within a framework, not just, absolute destitution. Saying, I can't afford it can sometimes sound very final, very emotional, or even a bit accusatory, like you're making me feel poor.
So it's not an excuse. It's more like a statement of the current boundary conditions.
Right.
It sounds almost like a business constraint. We have to deliver this project, but we are currently operating within a tight budget of X amount.
That is precisely the utility. It establishes the perimeter. It says, the financial boundary is here. Now let's get creative and work within it to find a solution. It invites collaboration rather than demanding a cancellation.
One's relatable.
Very relatable. If you're a university student, for instance, you can say, when I was a university student, I was always on a tight budget. Everyone understands that. It's a normalized part of life, and it's completely non-confrontational.
And I really like the redecorating example the sources provided because it underscores that being on a tight budget isn't the same as failure. It actually forces you to be resourceful.
Mm-hmm.
They managed to redecorate their whole house on a tight budget by doing most of the work themselves. The constraint actually fuels their creativity and their effort.
So if you put it all together, the toolkit really functions as a sequence. First, you can use set aside to establish your goodwill and your commitment to the plan. Then you use on a tight budget to define the non-negotiable financial perimeter. And finally, you can use pitch in to propose a collaborative, possibly non-financial solution.
Mastering that sequence is what makes the difference between canceling a trip and successfully negotiating a compromise that everyone feels good about.
And that framework is exactly what we are about to see in action.
Okay, so let's step into the pressure cooker, the actual conversation between Liam and Chloe. We're going to treat this as our structural blueprint for successful financial diplomacy.
This scenario is just perfect because it starts where most plans start, with a lot of enthusiasm and aspiration, but without any adequate logistical checking.
Right. Liam is excited. He's looking purely at the desirable outcome, and he's setting the bar very, very high.
His initial proposal is incredibly high stakes. He's seen some pictures online, and he immediately proposes this expensive, all-inclusive resort in Greece. He's focused on all the sensory details.
Yeah, he's talking about the white sandy beaches, the massive pool, the ease of having everything just taken care of. It's an easy, turnkey luxury experience.
And his enthusiasm is based on a crucial and often flawed assumption. He is operating from a position of financial readiness, and he's assuming that since they decided months ago that they would take a trip, Chloe has also successfully set aside all the necessary funds.
This is the moment. This is where that silent contract, that shared commitment to save, is put to the test.
And when that assumption hits reality, that is where things usually fall apart. Chloe now has the difficult job of grounding his aspiration in her logistics. And the source material, it labels her approach as a really successful navigation of a genuinely tricky situation.
So let's analyze her first moves. What did she do?
Her first move is crucial, and it's just pure emotional intelligence. It's the acknowledgement. She validates Liam's emotional investment in this idea. She doesn't lead with no.
She doesn't just shut it down.
Not at all. She leads with affirmation. She says, "It does look amazing, Liam. White sandy beaches, huge pool, that really is the dream." She confirms that their shared goal is still a great vacation, even if the specific luxury vehicle for that vacation is now, well, it's off the table.
By confirming that emotional connection to the idea, she's signaling that the shared objective, the trip itself, is still her priority. She's not rejecting the idea of a great trip, she's just putting a constraint on the price tag.
Exactly. And then comes the moment of honesty, the constraint and reason. She deploys the key phrases we just discussed. She doesn't apologize excessively. She just states the reality of her situation. She says, "I'm not sure I can afford that one, Liam. I'm on a tight budget at the moment because the price is quite high."
And she immediately follows that up.
She does, and this is critical. She immediately follows up by confirming she had been trying to set aside money every single month. This establishes her effort and her good intentions.
And then the vital component, the specific, credible reason. She explains that her car needed these expensive, unforeseen repairs last month, and that completely drained the savings she had dedicated to the trip.
This is a point where I think we need to pause, because this is often a point of contention in financial communication. Is there a risk that giving that level of detail, the car repairs TMI, too much information, does the source material offer any guidance on how much personal detail is actually appropriate when you're defining a budget constraint?
That is an excellent question. The material argues that in this kind of context with a close friend, that specificity is actually required. The nuance is this. Chloe is giving an external, unavoidable, almost verifiable emergency.
What's a financial accident?
It's a financial accident.
Yeah.
She's not providing details on her salary or her credit card debt or her daily spending habits. The car repair is seen as this third-party event that disrupted a previously responsible saving plan.
So the detail provides evidence without her needing to get defensive. It eliminates the need for any suspicion on Liam's part. He knows exactly why the budget boundary is there. If she had just vaguely said, "Oh, I spent the money," Liam might start questioning her choices, which could lead to resentment.
Right, you spent it on what?
Exactly. But by explaining that the money was saved and then deployed for a crisis, she protects her integrity. Her budget issue is seen as a temporary wall, not a permanent lack of means.
So that honesty is the essential lubricant here. It ensures that Liam responds with empathy, which is exactly what happens. His response is the pivotal moment that dictates the success of the rest of their conversation.
It really is the moment the friendship is tested. And Liam doesn't sigh, he doesn't pout, he doesn't dwell on his disappointment for even a second. He immediately pivots to prioritizing Chloe and their shared relationship.
What does he say?
He apologizes for her car troubles and says, "Oh, I didn't know that. I'm sorry to hear it." Okay, well, that changes things completely. We definitely need to find something that works for both of us.
That shift is instantaneous. The sources really emphasize this. He immediately prioritized the shared experience of going on a trip together over the specific high-cost destination. He recognized that the ultimate goal wasn't go to Greece in luxury.
No, the goal was spend quality time together.
Exactly.
And this is that emotional maturity we were talking about earlier. He validates her difficulty, he accepts the new reality of the budget, and he immediately commits to collaborative problem solving. He doesn't say, "Well, you figure out how to afford it." He reframes the constraint from Chloe's problem to our challenge.
And once that shift is made, the whole mood changes. It allows them to move into the collaborative solution phase. Liam doesn't retreat or suggest canceling. He proposes a concrete, cheaper alternative that structurally changes the cost dynamics of the holiday.
Right. He suggests that instead of the all-inclusive resort, they could rent a smaller apartment that has a kitchen. And crucially, he explicitly notes that this option would be much cheaper. He is taking co-ownership of the budget constraint and immediately finding a viable alternative path.
An apartment rental is so much less costly upfront than a resort. And the kitchen, that's the key. It introduces the possibility of removing the massive dining costs that are always associated with a high-end trip.
And Chloe, the friend with the constraint, she doesn't just passively agree, she actively enhances the idea. She confirms it's a great idea and introduces the concept of using that kitchen to cook breakfast and a few dinners.
This is the moment where the budget limitation starts transforming into a shared activity.
Yeah.
It's not a negative anymore.
It's not, and this is the perfect opportunity for her to reintroduce the key vocabulary, and she does it seamlessly. She suggests that they could all pitch in for groceries and supplies.
That's brilliant.
It is brilliant because it formally transforms her financial limitation into an opportunity for collective teamwork. It's no longer about her deficit. It is now about their joint resourcefulness.
It totally changes the mental framing of the holiday, doesn't it? Instead of mourning the lost luxury of the resort, they're now envisioning themselves going to a local market, buying fresh ingredients and cooking together. It's a joint project that's inherently more personal and way cheaper.
And then the ultimate reframing follows. They conclude that staying in a local apartment would feel more authentic than being isolated in a big resort bubble.
They turn the necessity of budgeting, self-catering, into a perceived upgrade in their cultural experience. The constraint didn't lead to defeat. It fueled their creativity. And it led them to a plan that was a better fit for their shared values anyway.
I think we need to spend a little more time on the power of that word authentic. It's just a genius move of psychological framing.
It really is.
They took the cheapest option and assigned it the highest value label they could possibly find. They didn't settle for less expensive, they opted for more immersive.
And that reframing is essential for maintaining the excitement for the trip. If the compromise just feels like deprivation, then the whole trip is tainted from the start. But if a compromise feels like a deliberate choice for a richer, more unique experience,
One that involves collaborative cooking and market visits.
then the enthusiasm is preserved, if not amplified. The constraint actually forced them to find value in different, non-monetary ways.
So the conversation ends with Chloe expressing deep gratitude and relief. She acknowledges how nervous she was to admit the budget issue in the first place.
And Liam's final response is just the perfect summary of the entire successful strategy. He just says, never. We're a team. Now let's find the perfect apartment.
He cements the fact that the relationship is the foundation, and the financial constraint was just a variable they had to solve together. It's the ultimate confirmation that the communication was successful.
They started with a major point of conflict, completely mismatched expectations, and they ended with reaffirmed trust and a viable, exciting new plan.
The source material is just spot on when it labels this exchange a masterclass in polite disagreement and problem solving. It really demonstrates that negotiation isn't about one side winning.
Right. It's about both sides finding a mutually agreeable path forward. So now we need to unpack the underlying strategy that made this perfect outcome actually achievable.
Let's start with the structure of their negotiation. They didn't just meet in the middle, they completely redefined the playing field. They very quickly identified the core problem, the resort cost disparity, and they collaboratively shifted the solution.
They went from high cost and low effort, which was the all-inclusive, to low cost and high effort, the apartment plus pitching in.
Exactly. And that required both of them to be flexible and to accept that the initial plan was obsolete the moment Chloe introduced the new financial reality.
And the speed of that transition is so crucial. They spent almost zero time lamenting the lost resort. They immediately jumped to alternative structural changes, renting a place with a kitchen, organizing self-catering, researching local areas.
That focus on actionable solutions rather than disappointment is such a key strategic takeaway.
And we have to revisit the immense power that was granted by Chloe using that phrase to set aside. This validated her commitment instantly. If a friend just tells you they can't afford a trip, and you know they've been planning for months, trust can be shaken if they don't offer any context.
For sure. You'd be thinking, why did you agree to save if you never intended to?
By demonstrating that she had been trained to set aside money, she proved that her budget issue was circumstantial. It was a hijacking by the car repair, not a lack of effort or a lack of interest in their shared trip.
And that validation is just foundational for trust, especially when you're dealing with financial matters and long-term friendships. Without that trust, any subsequent budget discussions will always be tainted by suspicion.
And strategically, we can see how the shift in tone, which was driven by that suggestion to pitch in, was the most effective maneuver of the entire conversation. Before she said that, the discussion was really focused on Chloe's financial deficit.
It was her problem.
It was.
Sure.
But after that suggestion, the solution became their shared endeavor. This collaborative language transforms what could be a perceived financial weakness into a shared strength.
It essentially eliminates guilt. Chloe, the friend with the lower budget, doesn't feel like she's a burden. Instead, she gets to feel like a valuable contributor. Maybe she's the one who handles all the meal planning or organizes the market runs or secures the apartment booking. Her effort becomes her contribution currency.
Which leads us directly to the broader implications of this interaction, which is the emotional intelligence that was deployed by both friends. The sources are very clear on this. It is inherently awkward and stressful to tell a friend you can't afford something they are excited about.
Oh, absolutely. The fear of disappointing a friend often causes people to avoid the conversation altogether, which then leads to strained relationships or these sudden, unexplained cancellations at the last minute.
And this success story demonstrates that being direct, being honest, and using specific neutral language, it minimizes that friction and it maximizes the chance of a successful outcome. Because Chloe was so clear that she was on a tight budget and provided a credible reason, Liam knew exactly how to respond.
He could respond with empathy and solutions rather than with confusion or resentment.
We should also analyze Liam's internal calculus for a moment. Why did he pivot so quickly and so gracefully?
I think he recognized that the cost of choosing the expensive resort in this scenario would be the loss of the shared experience with Chloe.
Right. The ultimate cost of the resort wasn't just the money, it was the friendship component of the trip. He recognized that the friendship held a much higher value than the specific luxury destination.
And that is the core strategic takeaway for anyone who finds themselves in Liam's position. When your friend expresses a budget constraint, you have to immediately prioritize the person and the shared experience over the specific high-cost item. Your response really determines whether the friendship survives this financial pressure test.
His immediate response, we definitely need to find something that works for both of us, is the absolute gold standard of financial and emotional maturity.
So the sources conclude on this really hopeful, powerful note. They say that talking about money doesn't have to be a conflict or a hurdle. With the right attitude, the necessary preparation, trying to set aside the money and the correct language on a tight budget pitch in it can actually make plans stronger. And far more importantly, the relationships that support those plans, it can make them stronger too.
They co-created a new plan based on mutual respect, and the conversation itself became this positive affirmation of their partnership.
This detailed blueprint of their conversation, it essentially gives all of us permission to be honest as long as we follow the etiquette. It gives us the tools to communicate our financial reality without feeling defensive or guilty.
It reframes the whole exercise. Financial planning with friends stops being this competitive comparison of income, and it starts being what it should be, a collaborative logistical exercise that's aimed at maximizing happiness within whatever parameters exist.
So as we wrap up this very detailed deep dive, let's just synthesize the essential ingredients for successful financial planning with friends. It really comes down to preparation, clear communication, and prioritizing the shared human experience above any specific material object or luxury item.
And your key vocabulary toolkit, which we've extracted from this analysis, is the non-negotiable part of this process. Use on a tight budget to define the constraint politely and professionally. Use set aside to validate your prior commitment and establish your credibility as a reliable planner.
And then use pitch-in to suggest a collaborative solution that involves teamwork, whether that's financial or effort-based, which transforms a deficit into a joint project.
And remember the overarching lesson from the Liam and Chloe case study. These conversations are primarily about mutual respect and teamwork, not just about accounting. Money is simply a tool, but communication is the critical mechanism that ensures the relationship and the plan itself remains intact.
Their successful negotiation preserved their friendship, and it still secured them a great holiday. It was just one they had to invent together.
And to leave you with a concrete action item, we'd encourage you to integrate this knowledge by reflecting on your own past experiences. Think about a time you had to plan an activity with someone else where the cost created some friction or it led to some awkwardness.
And reflect on the specific language that was used. Was it vague? Was it emotional? How might using a phrase like, I'm on a tight budget, or suggesting we should all pitch in with the planning, have fundamentally altered that outcome? Understanding the vocabulary is the first step. Applying the emotional intelligence demonstrated in that masterclass conversation. Well, that's the ultimate goal. Start practicing that neutral, honest language today.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep communicating transparently, and may your shared budgets always lead to shared successes. Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're doing something a little bit different.
A little unusual for us.
We're not looking at market reports or, some big geopolitical text. We're actually analyzing a resource that was designed to teach conversational English.
Right.
Specifically, it's for B2 level students, and it's all about how to talk about money, budgeting, spending, all that stuff.
Which is such a fascinating choice for source material because it really gives us a clear mission, doesn't it?
It does.
Our job here is to look past the grammar, the vocabulary lists, and really pull out the universal truths about managing money that are sort of hidden in this simple dialogue. Because when you teach someone how to talk about saving and spending, what you're really teaching them, kind of by default, is the psychology behind financial health. So we're using this language lesson as a blueprint.
It's a blueprint for better financial behavior. I like that. And I think the beauty of it is that it completely ignores the really complex stuff.
Totally. No stocks, no bonds.
No interest rates, no macroeconomics. It just zeroes in on the day-to-day reality that
everyone deals with, right?
Yeah,
budgeting, spending less, and maybe most importantly, just talking about it.
And that universality is so critical. The source material gets it right away. It says, look, everyone deals with money, but talking about it is It's hard.
It can be really sensitive.
It's often filled with shame, or there are cultural taboos. It's not just a math problem. It's deeply, deeply emotional.
Which I think brings us right to the first major takeaway before we even look at a single number. The lesson says the most crucial skill is learning how to discuss money politely and supportively.
Yes.
That's the precondition. If you want to get stable, you have to be able to talk about the problem without feeling like you're being judged.
That framing is the real genius of the whole thing. It suggests that budgeting success isn't just about your own private discipline.
It's about having external empathetic support. The dialogue we're about to break down, it's a model for how to take a conversation from just, I'm so stressed, to, okay, here's a plan.
All while avoiding that tone, that accusatory thing that just shuts people down.
Exactly. You have to be able to talk about the mess before you can start cleaning it up.
Okay, so let's get into the building blocks, the vocabulary. What's so interesting is that it's not abstract nouns. It's all action.
It's all verbs, phrasal verbs specifically.
And there are 3 core phrases that basically define the entire process of getting your finances under control.
Yeah, these 3 they're like the engine room of personal finance. They really capture that whole cycle of budgeting, understanding your behavior, changing it, and then rewarding yourself for that change.
These are the little tactical decisions you make every day
that determine everything in the long run.
So let's start with the first one. It's probably the hardest one for most people to cut back on. The simple definition is, to reduce how much you spend on something. The example they give is pretty straightforward. To save for a new car, I had to cut back on eating out at restaurants.
To cut back on is basically the linguistic way of saying constraint.
Yeah.
It's admitting the painful truth that, your resources are finite, but the phrase itself, it forces you to ask a question, doesn't it? It's not just spend less, it's cut back on what?
Right. Where's the fat? Where am I overdoing it? And what am I willing to sacrifice for something bigger down the road?
Precisely. And the source gives that really helpful non-financial parallel. It mentions cutting back on sugar.
Which is such a good analogy because it highlights the psychological battle. When you cut back on sugar, you're not just making a logical choice. You're fighting cravings. You're fighting habits.
It's the same with money. You're fighting the urge for instant gratification. The psychology of cutting back is so tied up in this idea of loss aversion.
Explain that a bit.
Well, we feel the pain of losing something much more intensely than we feel the pleasure of gaining something. So the pain of losing your daily 4-pound latte feels very real, very immediate.
Way more real than the abstract idea of having an extra 100 pounds at the end of the month.
Exactly. So budgeting at its core is about training yourself to overcome that immediate felt loss for a bigger future gain.
So if you're going to cut back, it can't just be about stopping something. That leaves a vacuum. The source kind of hints at this, but we should really spell it out. It has to involve substitution.
Oh, 100%. That is the key. Successful constraint is not deprivation. It is substitution.
So if I stop buying lunch at work,
you have to start making lunch at home. And that requires planning. It takes time. It takes effort.
Yeah, that's where it falls apart for most people, I think. The effort of the substitution.
It is. We try to remove the pleasure, the convenience of buying lunch without replacing the routine that it provided. So really, when we say it cut back, what we should be thinking is strategic habit replacement.
That's a great way to put it. Okay, so that's constraint. But a life of just constraint is, it's miserable.
And unsustainable.
Which brings us to the second core phrase, which is kind of the necessary release valve. To splurge.
A fun one.
The fun one, exactly. The definition is simple. Spending a lot of money on something luxurious, something you don't need.
See, this validates the human need for enjoyment. A budget that is purely about punishment, that's only about cutting back, is doomed to fail.
You're not robots.
We're not. We're driven by pleasure, by rewards. And the examples they use, like splurging on a designer handbag or a fancy hotel, they connect the action directly to, quality of life, to aspiration.
But here's the really brilliant part, and this is where it gets into actual strategy. The conversation they analyze later on makes a critical distinction.
Yes, between the 2 kinds of splurging.
The planned splurge versus the impulsive splurge.
And that, right there, that is the crux of financial maturity. An impulsive splurge, which we see the character Ben do, it's usually driven by something else. Stress, boredom, feeling bad about yourself.
Retail therapy.
Retail therapy, exactly. It gives you that instant hit of dopamine, but it's followed almost immediately by regret, by guilt, because you know you've undermined your own goals.
Whereas the planned splurge is totally different. It's pre-approved happiness.
It's guilt-free.
It's an intentional act of enjoyment that you've worked for. When you budget for something, say concert tickets, you're building that joy right into your financial plan.
It completely changes the psychology of it. A planned splurge is the reward that makes all the cutting back feel worthwhile. It connects the sacrifice you're making today with a very specific, defined pleasure in the future.
So we have constraint, which requires substitution, and we have a planned reward, which requires intention. But neither of those can happen without the third pillar,
The foundation for everything else.
that you keep track of. The definition is to monitor something, to maintain up-to-date information.
To keep track of is just another way of saying awareness.
Yeah.
It's the first step. You absolutely cannot fix what you cannot see.
And the non-financial example they use is keeping track of appointments on a calendar. It's about data management, not just money.
Right, but the financial application is where it gets really powerful. The text says, I use a special app to keep track of my monthly expenses.
That's the modern game changer, isn't it? The technology removes all the old friction. You don't have to sit there with a shoebox full of receipts anymore.
Thank God. And that automated data is revolutionary because it fights our own brains. We are terrible at remembering things accurately,
Especially small things.
especially small things. We remember the big stuff, rent, the car payment. But our memory is designed to forget the 4 pounds here, the 7 pounds there.
The daily coffees.
Those are the transactions where a budget just hemorrhages money. We conveniently forget them until the end of the month when we look at our account and wonder where it all went.
So the three verbs really do form a perfect loop then.
A continuous cycle.
You keep track of everything, which is awareness. That awareness shows you where you need to cut back on, which is constraint. And that successful constraint is what frees up the money to splurge intentionally.
That's the whole picture. If you are struggling with your finances, chances are you are failing at one of those three actions. And the source is brilliant because it distills this entire complex behavioral cycle into 3 simple, actionable phrases.
Okay, so we've got the framework, the vocabulary for control. Now let's move into the drama, the dialogue itself.
Right. This is where the theory hits the road.
This is where we see it all play out with financial stress, self-discovery, and I think some really great insights into modern spending triggers.
Yeah, the dialogue makes it all so relatable. It doesn't start with a bounce check or a bill collector. It starts with a very modern, very emotional trigger.
It starts with the character, Ben, feeling stressed out while he's scrolling on Instagram. He's seeing all his friends on these amazing holidays in Italy or Thailand, and it's making him feel bad.
And that's such a profound place to start. It connects his personal money problems directly to social pressure and aspirational goals. He's suffering from a classic case of FOMO,
Fear of missing out.
which is basically weaponized by social media, right? The curated perfection you see online makes your own reality feel inadequate. His desire to travel, which should be a positive thing, becomes a source of stress.
So his goal isn't just this vague idea of saving money. It's very specific. He wants to be able to afford that trip to Italy.
Yes. And by having that tangible emotional goal, the budgeting advice that comes later is so much more powerful. His friend Sarah isn't just helping him balance a spreadsheet, she's helping him save for a dream.
It's also worth noting that feeling of inadequacy is a huge trigger for spending.
Oh, absolutely. When you feel less than, you often turn to emotional, impulsive spending to get a quick hit of feeling better. It's a compensatory mechanism. So he's in a very vulnerable state right at the start.
And that emotional state leads to his big confession about his finances. He says money is a bit tight, and then he delivers the classic line.
The one we all recognize.
I never have enough money left at the end of the month. It's that universal feeling of a leaky bucket. You keep pouring money in, and it just disappears.
But the real diagnosis comes right after that. He admits his problem isn't a lack of income, it's a lack of a system.
He says he doesn't keep track of his spending.
And then the killer line, I just spend money from my account and hope for the best.
Oh, that is such a perfect snapshot of the denial phase of financial trouble. Hope for the best.
It's an anxiety management technique. You avoid looking at the data because you're afraid of what it will tell you.
It's easier to live with that vague, nagging stress of money is tight than to face the specific, maybe embarrassing truth that you spent, 700 pounds on takeout last month.
Exactly. Hope is a defense mechanism against accountability. And that's why Sarah's response is so brilliant and so tactical.
She didn't lecture him.
Not at all. She doesn't say, you need to be more responsible. She gives him a tool, a concrete, easy solution. She tells him about her game changer, The budgeting app that connects to your bank account.
Which is the bridge. It's the thing that gets him from denial to awareness because it automates the keep track of part, the most painful part.
And she uses her own story to sell him on it, to show him the power of what it can reveal.
Yes, her personal aha moment is the core of the whole lesson for Ben and for us listening. She was shocked when she saw where her money was going.
Two things, specifically.
Two very small, insidious things,
Yeah.
daily coffees and buying lunch at work.
The absolute classic death by 1,000 cuts expenses.
They're perfect examples because they're so easy to rationalize. They're part of your routine. They're socially acceptable. They give you a little break in the day.
A small, necessary treat.
But the data doesn't rationalize. The data just shows the numbers. And she realized the accumulation of those small costs, what the dialogue calls, it all adds up, was doing way more damage than any one big purchase.
She was paying a daily convenience tax without ever really thinking about the total bill.
And then the source gives us that beautiful, specific, quantifiable number, the detail that makes it all click.
She saved over 100 pounds a month
A month.
just by making coffee at home and bringing her lunch 3 times a week.
Let's just sit with that number for a second, 100 pounds. For you, the listener, think about what that means. If Ben wants to go to Italy, you can get a round-trip flight to Rome for about that much.
So in 1 month, just by changing his lunch habits, he's paid for his flight.
In a year, that's 1,200 pounds. That is the difference between a stressful summer at home and that guilt-free trip to Thailand he was looking at on Instagram. The specificity of that number is what proves the whole strategy works.
And once he hears that, Ben starts to open up more. He moves from just hiding his lack of a system to admitting his specific weakness.
Yes, he identifies his own budget killer,
Online shopping. He says, a package seems to arise every other day.
which is a slightly different psychological beast, isn't it? Sarah's costs were about sustenance, food, and caffeine. Ben's is about discretionary items, probably driven by that same impulse we talked about earlier.
The boredom, the stress, the social comparison. Online shopping just makes it dangerously easy. There's no friction.
And this is the perfect moment for the dialogue to deploy that idiom, it all adds up. It unites both of their problems.
Right. Sarah's 5 pounds a day on coffee and Ben's 20 pounds every other day on some gadget.
They're both subject to the same relentless math. The idiom is a warning. Don't you dare dismiss a transaction just because it feels small in the moment.
So once the problems are on the table, the conversation shifts again. Sarah moves them towards the solution, the reward, the smart splurge strategy.
This is where she proves that budgeting isn't about being miserable. It's about being smart. It's about optimization.
And her example is key. She says she knew she wanted to splurge on some concert tickets. So what did she do?
She made a conscious choice. She decided to cut back on other, less important things to make room for it. That is active resource allocation. She was pre-selecting her joy.
Compare that to Ben. His reality is the complete opposite. He admits he just impulsively bought a new gaming headset last week.
And how does he feel about it?
Guilty. Ashamed. The thing itself might be cool, but the way he bought it was destructive to his goals.
The contrast couldn't be clearer. Sarah's splurge was a controlled celebration of her own discipline. Ben's was a hurried, shameful reaction to some feeling. The lesson is that awareness and planning are the only things separating a guilty impulse from a guilt-free pleasure.
When you plan for it, you get rid of that awful feeling, that cognitive dissonance between I want to save and I want this nice thing.
Exactly. This entire exchange is just a perfect model for personal transformation.
Which leads us nicely into our next section,
Yeah.
analyzing the communication itself. Because this dialogue isn't just about money.
No, it's a masterclass. A masterclass in how to give supportive, effective advice about a really sensitive topic.
I mean, one of the biggest roadblocks to talking about money is the fear of judgment.
Yeah.
Ben is already feeling down because of Instagram. He does not need a friend telling him he's bad with money.
And Sarah never, ever goes there. She avoids all of that accusatory language. There's no, you should, or why did you?
Her main strategy is so powerful. It's modeling and relatability. Her first move is to say, I used to be exactly the same.
That phrase is magic.
Yeah.
It just dissolves the shame. It completely changes the power dynamic. Suddenly, she's not an expert lecturing him. She's a peer, a fellow struggler who just happens to be a few steps ahead on the path.
That one line, I used to be exactly the same. I feel like you could apply that to giving advice about anything. Diet, exercise, time management. It just lets the other person drop their defenses.
And then she backs up that empathy with proof. With her personal story, she shares her own shock at the coffee and lunch spending. It grounds her advice in reality. It's not theoretical.
It's not some article she read. It's advice born from her own painful discovery and her own rewarding change.
And the third piece of this is that the whole conversation is geared towards action and agency.
They don't just wallow in the problem.
No. The arc of the dialogue moves so quickly from Ben's vague stress to a really clear, measurable plan.
He leaves that conversation feeling optimistic, and he knows exactly what to do. He's got a to-do list, get the link from her, give it a try for 1 month, and his new mantra, keep track of everything.
The conversation successfully moved him from being a passive victim of his circumstances to an active agent in his own life.
And if we look back at the actual B2 level language they use, you can see how it facilitates all of this. The vocabulary gives structure to the vague anxiety.
Totally. Ben doesn't have to stumble through a long emotional explanation. He can just say, I don't keep track of my money, and my weakness is online shopping.
It puts a box around the problem. It makes it feel solvable.
And it allows Sarah to offer encouragement without sounding patronizing. She can say things like, you might be surprised at how quickly you can save up. It connects his actions directly to his goal.
It's amazing how the language really forces the focus onto observation and choice, rather than emotion and guilt. You can't feel your way to a better budget.
No, but you can measure and choose and communicate your way there, and the structure of this simple dialogue models that perfectly. It's basically a behavioral finance therapy session disguised as a language lesson.
Okay, let's try to synthesize all of this.
Right.
We have this core loop of transformation that Ben is about to start. He begins in a bad place, paralyzed by comparing himself to others and in total denial about his own habits.
Then Sarah introduces the first element, awareness, the app, the tool to keep track of things.
That awareness then reveals the hidden damage, the coffee, the lunches, the online shopping, which enables the second step, strategic constraint, the decision to cut back on those things.
And that constraint, that sacrifice, is what frees up the resources for the final crucial step, calculated enjoyment, the chance to splurge on his dream trip to Italy.
It's the whole cycle. Mastering your money really is just mastering those 3 actions over and over again. It's the journey from feeling like money controls you to feeling like you control your money.
And the most powerful thing about it is how accessible it all is. You don't need a PhD in economics for this.
You just need to be honest with yourself about where the money is going.
And accept that planned happiness is infinitely better than impulsive guilt. The source material really nails its goal. It connects the dots between a vocabulary word in a classroom and the confidence to talk about and change something that really matters in your life.
So before we wrap this up, let's go back to the very beginning of that conversation for one last sort of provocative thought.
Okay.
We've established that the advice was all about internal controllable things, right? Sarah's coffee, Ben's shopping. It's all about personal discipline.
Yes. The focus was entirely inward. How can I change my habits based on my data?
But the thing that kicked off Ben's stress in the first place was totally external. It was seeing those perfect travel photos on Instagram. Exactly. That social comparison creates a very real psychological pressure, which then leads directly to the impulsive spending. The budget app can fix the symptom, the spending, but does it fix the trigger, the envy, the FOMO?
That is a really crucial modern question, and it builds directly on the most important principle we discussed, keep track of.
How so?
Well, if awareness is the key, maybe the definition of a modern budget needs to be bigger than just tracking pounds and pence. If Ben knows that 20 minutes of scrolling Instagram creates an emotional state that costs him 50 pounds an hour later,
then that trigger itself is a line item in the budget.
Shouldn't it be? If that's a quantifiable financial risk, shouldn't he be budgeting for it? Maybe that means budgeting for a stress management tool, or maybe the cutback on action isn't about spending, but about cutting back on a social media time.
That is a fascinating evolution of the idea. We're not just tracking expenses, we're tracking triggers.
It moves the whole conversation from managing money to managing your behavioral and emotional inputs. If a budget is really about planning for your future self's security and happiness, then you have to address the root causes of your current financial anxiety.
So you track the psychological cause that leads to the financial effect.
Imagine if Sarah's app didn't just track where the money went, but also tracked his screen time on certain apps right before a spending spike. That would be the ultimate form of awareness.
Then the constraint isn't just cut back on coffee. It's cut back on comparing your life to the curated lives of strangers online.
Which is a profound extension of the keep track of principle. It's financial literacy evolving into, conscious living literacy. And it's a really powerful idea to leave with you, our listener, that builds directly on the simple foundation we found in this source.
Absolutely. So we'd encourage you to think about your own life with these 3 action verbs and go beyond just money. What are the emotional triggers you need to keep track of?
What non-financial habits could you strategically cut back on to free up mental energy? Maybe it is social media or the news or something else entirely.
And finally, what intentional, calculated enjoyment, what splurge are you actively working towards?
Whether it's that trip to Italy, a big career move, or just a truly peaceful weekend, make sure the constraints you accept today are directly funding the joy you're planning for tomorrow. Use this language to do more than just describe your life. Use it to reshape it.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.
Okay, let's unpack this. We are diving into, I think, one of the most essential and often one of the most avoided conversations in any long-term partnership, discussing shared financial goals.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this isn't just about spreadsheets and budgets, right?
Not at all. It's about aligning 2 separate lives, 2 separate histories with money and 2 different sets of habits into a singular productive future.
It truly is foundational. I mean, when you think about any significant life milestone, buying a home, having kids, even just planning a big vacation, the success of that goal, it really hinges entirely on the couple's ability to communicate clearly.
And to design a kind of shared financial operating system.
Exactly. The sources we looked at for this give us a phenomenal case study. I mean, it's a high-level, practical blueprint showing exactly how one couple navigated this, how they moved from these vague hopes into a concrete, achievable plan.
Absolutely. And our source material gives us the scenario of Maya and Alex, who are planning a major purchase. And what makes this so valuable for you listening is not just what they decided to do, but the meticulous 4-step structure they used.
Yes, the language.
Yeah.
The specific high-leverage language they used.
And how they took their different saving styles, which could have been a huge source of conflict, and turned it into like a design parameter for a better solution.
That is the core mission of this deep dive. Building a shared financial future. It starts with open communication. We all know that.
Yeah.
But that communication has to be structured.
Right.
So for you, the learner, the goal today is to walk away with a practical, repeatable 4-step structure and the precise vocabulary you need to really take control of these conversations.
Right.
To ensure alignment, minimize conflict, and, create actual measurable progress.
So the mission is crystal clear. We're dissecting the specific language and the constructive conversational blueprint that took the idea of maybe buying a car sometime into a fully defined, fact-based plan, complete with a deadline and an automated mechanism.
It's a shortcut to being well-informed about the best, most psychologically sound strategies for financial collaboration.
So let's get into it. When we look at Maya and Alex's successful outcome, we realize it wasn't an accident. It wasn't a fluke.
Not at all.
They were using language strategically. And every effective financial partnership conversation, it seems to require 3 key linguistic or conceptual pillars.
And the source material just hands them to us. They're like the keys to the whole conversation. Language in these discussions is so much more than just describing reality. It actually creates the reality of the collaboration.
What do you mean by that?
Well, if you lack the precise terms to define the goal or the scale of the challenge and the mechanism for achieving it, the whole conversation just stays abstract.
And abstract financial goals.
They're the ones that get put off. They're easily deferred, and frankly, they're rarely achieved.
Okay, so let's begin with pillar 1. This is the concept of agreement and shared understanding, and it's captured perfectly by the idiom, to be on the same page.
This is the absolute psychological and emotional foundation. Why is being on the same page so crucial? Because you are literally trying to merge 2 separate financial histories, 2 totally distinct behavioral patterns into a single unified strategy.
And if there's even a slight misalignment.
Right. If you believe next year means, say, February, and your partner thinks it means December, you're already pulling the shared effort in 2 subtly different directions.
Which leads to inefficiency and, I'd imagine, a lot of silent resentment.
That's the real killer, the silent resentment.
So the definition is simple, to be in agreement or have a shared understanding, but the application in finance, as you're saying, is profound.
It is. When Maya uses this phrase with Alex, she's prioritizing the relationship over the transaction.
Ah, that's interesting.
She's essentially saying, the most important outcome here is that we agree on the path, even more than the outcome itself.
So when she says, I really think we need to be on the same page about how we're going to get there, that's not just a casual phrase.
No, it's a strategic move. She establishes a collaborative frame. The success criterion becomes joint understanding and commitment. And that prevents the discussion from, devolving into a debate about who's better at saving.
It shifts the focus to our goal that requires our joint understanding.
Precisely.
It's an incredibly powerful rhetorical tool then, because it demands collaboration. The problem becomes the lack of consensus, not necessarily the lack of cash.
And this phrase, it has deep applications everywhere, not just money. Think about a team launching a product.
Sure.
If the marketing team and the engineering team aren't on the same page about the release features, what happens?
The whole project just grinds to a halt. It stalls.
It's an efficiency tool. But we have to expand on this a bit. It's not just about agreeing on the 4,000-pound target. It's about agreeing on the risk involved. Are both partners comfortable locking that money away if an emergency pops up?
Are they aligned on the exact timeline? Does next year allow for missing a payment or two, or is it rigid?
Yes. The moment you state the goal of being on the same page, you open the door to discussing all of these nuanced, often hidden points of friction.
And if you don't proactively use this kind of language to seek alignment, you fall into what the source material kind of hints at, the silent tally method.
Which is catastrophic in finance.
Where one person is mentally tracking the savings, getting more and more frustrated by the other's perceived lack of effort. But they never bring it up constructively.
Until it explodes, using "we need to be on the same page" forces that mental tally out into the open, into a structured, safe discussion.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. So, moving on to pillar 2, the concrete financial hurdle. This is captured by the term down payment.
And here we go. We transition immediately from the emotional foundation to the cold, hard, concrete reality.
Right.
A down payment is, that initial chunk of money you pay when you buy something expensive like a car or a house. It serves as a commitment, and it reduces the amount you need to borrow.
And the specific detail in the source material is what makes this so powerful. Maya did the research and she named the amount. 4,000 pounds. Why is this specific number so profoundly important?
Because it transforms the vague goal of saving up into a mathematically defined problem.
With a clear finish line.
Exactly. It's the difference between aiming for the horizon and aiming for a specific beacon in the dark. The number 4,000 pounds give the goal weight, dimension, and accountability.
I mean, if Maya had just said, we need to save a lot, Alex's contribution of, say, 50 pounds a month might feel adequate to him.
Even if it mathematically guarantees failure. But 4,000 pounds forces them to reverse engineer a strategy, to figure out a pace that is actually achievable.
And, crucially, the down payment. It defines the scope of the sacrifice required.
Yes.
When they hear 4,000 pounds, they immediately have to start thinking about how they need to adjust their monthly spending to hit that.
And it acts as this external neutral source of accountability.
Yeah.
It's not Maya saying, Alex, your spending is bad.
Right. It's Maya saying, the bank and the required loan terms dictate that we need a decent down payment of at least 4,000 pounds if we want a manageable monthly payment.
And let's go a little deeper into the financial mechanics there. A larger down payment, it doesn't just make the monthly payment smaller, it often signals less risk to the lender.
Which can get you a better interest rate, a lower APR.
Exactly. So by focusing on the 4,000 pound target, they are focusing on reducing the total cost of ownership through better financing terms, not just accumulating cash.
That reframes the whole thing. It's a sophisticated financial move, not just, delayed gratification.
It becomes a common enemy they have to defeat together.
Right.
Which is far, far better than fighting each other over personal spending habits.
Okay. Which brings us to the final piece of the puzzle, pillar 3. The mechanism for action. And this is defined by the phrase, to pool money.
Ah, this is the active verb. The mechanism that turns intention into an actual system. To pool money just means collecting money from different people into a single shared fund for a common defined purpose.
And this is where the conversation moves past just recognizing the problem.
The down payment.
Right. And it moves straight into the solution, the pooling. It defines the action itself as collaborative.
They are creating a joint venture, formally acknowledging that this is a shared effort that requires combined capital. It's not just two parallel individual saving efforts anymore.
The word pool itself, it implies unification, shared ownership.
It really does. It means that the money, once it's deposited, belongs equally to the goal, not individually to Maya or Alex.
That seems really key.
It is, because it establishes shared mental accounting. They're not tracking my 200 pounds and your 200 pounds. They're tracking our 400 pounds that goes toward the car.
And if they didn't use this term or this concept, the discussion could just turn back into that silent tally.
Where one partner feels like they're carrying more of the burden.
And this language, it also prepares Alex for the next logical step, which is creating a dedicated joint account, which we'll get into.
It does. The language itself dictates the mechanism. By introducing the concept of pooling, Maya signals that the system design will require shared infrastructure, not just shared good intentions.
It's amazing how brilliantly these three concepts interlock.
They really do.
Yeah.
You need to be on the same page
Which is the alignment,
about the necessary down payment
the concrete reality,
so that you can agree to pool the money.
the specific action.
Without that linguistic groundwork, the entire project it collapses into a messy emotional confrontation.
So now let's analyze the actual dynamic of the conversation, because the way Maya initiated and guided this whole discussion was, it was a masterclass in collaboration.
Absolutely. She sets the stage for success before a single pound is even mentioned. And as we've seen countless times, financial discussions often fail before they even begin.
Why is that?
Because they're initiated at a moment of stress or distraction or even accusation. Maya preempts all of those failure points.
Her first action is strategic. She asks Alex to pause the TV. The source describes them just, having a quiet evening at home.
And that request to pause is a classic example of creating a dedicated space.
Yeah.
Behavioral scientists call it creating friction against distraction.
So you're making it harder to be distracted.
Exactly. When you're having a high-stakes conversation about your future security,
Yeah.
you need full mutual attention. Trying to multitask a financial discussion with, watching a show sends the message that the money talk is secondary.
It's not urgent.
Right. Which invites passive resistance or, failure to retain crucial information. Pausing the TV says, this requires our full mutual attention right now.
And then the tone. The immediate tone is so crucial. When Alex naturally asks, is everything okay? Maya immediately provides that assurance. Everything's fine.
And this is a calculated, constructive use of conflict avoidance. She is diffusing his immediate defensive posture.
Because if she had started with, Alex, we need to talk about your spending habits, we'll never get the car.
The conversation is over. It's done. It's rooted in accusation and blame before it even starts.
By saying everything's fine, she neutralizes that emotional landmine. She's signaling, this is a conversation about the future, not a review of your past mistakes.
And that allows both of them to stay solution-focused.
Okay, but let's introduce a critical challenge here. I can hear a listener asking, is everything's fine always the right approach?
That's a great question.
If they were facing a real financial crisis, like a job loss or massive debt, would sugarcoating the initiation be, counterproductive?
It's a key distinction. In a crisis scenario, the goal is immediate problem recognition and triage, not shared goal setting.
Okay.
But for a planned goal, like a car purchase, where the urgency is self-imposed, the gentle initiation works. It works because the problem isn't a current state of emergency. The problem is the inertia preventing them from reaching the goal.
So Maya is battling inertia, not immediate disaster.
Precisely. Her tone is designed to lower Alex's psychological guard against change.
Got it. Okay, so next we see the classic trap of vagueness. This comes from Alex's initial thinking. We'll just save up and buy one when we have the money.
And this is default financial thinking for so many people. People often confuse intention with planning.
Saving up feels like a plan, but it's not.
It's not. It's insufficient for complex goals for three main reasons, and this is crucial for you to understand. First, it lacks a defined total. That allows the savings to just wander aimlessly.
Second, it lacks a deadline, meaning the urgency just fades and the goal constantly recedes into the future.
And third, it lacks an active, measurable, and automated plan. It relies on willpower.
And willpower is a finite resource. It runs out.
It always runs out.
It's why so many New Year's resolutions fail, right? People resolve to get fit without defining what that means, the time frame or the specific workout plan. It's just too vague.
And Maya solves this by introducing the facts.
She says, I know, but saving up is a bit vague. I did some research. and will need a decent down payment of at least £4,000.
And boom, she masterfully transitions the conversation from subjective opinion, I think we should save more, to objective fact. Research shows we need £4,000 to achieve this goal effectively.
And Alex's response says it all. £4,000. Wow, that's a lot more than I thought.
You can feel it right there. The external factual reality has landed. It has created the necessary sense of scale and urgency. The problem is now quantified.
That shared moment of realization is so powerful.
And Maya follows this up, but still very neutrally. She says, and at our current rate of saving, well, we aren't really saving at all.
Which is not a judgment. It's an empirical statement based on data.
Exactly. It's zero-based data, and it sets the stage perfectly for the teamwork call.
And here's where we get into the behavioral psychology. This is addressing different financial styles constructively. The core conflict point emerges. Alex admits, I'm just not very good at saving. When I see money in my account, I tend to spend it.
This is the moment. This is the moment where so many couples fight.
But Maya doesn't lecture.
No, she validates and she normalizes. She says, I know, and I'm a bit of a saver, so we have different styles. That's okay. This is the pivot point of the entire conversation.
By reframing the issue as different styles, she elevates it from a moral failure, like Alex is irresponsible,
to a design constraint. We need a system that works around Alex's tendency for instant gratification.
She respects his honesty about his own behavioral weakness.
That is so critical. They're recognizing that they have different processing speeds for delayed gratification. Alex's spending behavior isn't malice. It's a lack of effective impulse control when cash is visible.
Therefore, the solution must involve
removing visibility and access. This is behavioral science applied directly to personal finance.
And if Maya had criticized him, the conversation would have just ended in defensiveness.
Absolutely. But because she accepted the difference, they could constructively focus on designing a resilient system.
So if you, the listener, have a partner whose style is different from yours, this is the lesson. Your solution has to accommodate their specific behavior, not try to change their fundamental psychology overnight.
Because if a system is difficult for one partner to maintain, the system will fail for both of you. It's that simple.
This brings us to the core of the deep dive. The entire conversation we just analyzed, it follows this precise four-step structure that acted as their success template.
And this blueprint is what moves them so efficiently from just vague anxiety to a measurable plan. It's sequential. This is important. Skipping a step or executing the steps out of order drastically increases the chance of friction and failure.
It guides the partners predictably from shared motivation to practical implementation.
Exactly.
Okay, so step one, state the shared goal, the North Star.
The North Star. It has to be positive, explicit, and mutually desired. In this case, it was the plan to buy a new car next year.
Notice the immediate use of we and the time frame next year.
And the analysis here has to be deeper than just, saying the goal out loud. This step provides the emotional fuel.
Well, what do you mean by that?
Well, if the goal is only truly important to one person, say, Maya wanted a specific luxury car and Alex was happy taking the bus, then the automated saving system they set up will eventually break down.
Because the non-invested partner lacks the motivation to keep contributing £200 a month.
Precisely. This step secures the emotional buy-in first, before anything else.
And what would be the consequence of skipping step one and going straight to step two, the factual challenge?
Okay, let's play that out. If Maya had started by saying, we need £4,000, Alex would likely respond defensively.
Why? What's the rush? I like our old car.
Exactly. By starting with the goal they both want, the factual challenge that follows is framed as an obstacle to overcome, not a reason to quit. It maintains that positive, forward-facing emotional orientation.
Okay, that's a key insight. So, step two. Present the factual challenge, the reality check.
And this is the introduction of the hard data, the specific need for the £4,000 down payment. As we established, this is crucial because it externalizes the problem. It shifts the dialogue from being about personality to being about logistics.
I like to think of it like planning a marathon. Step one is agreeing they both want to finish the marathon.
Good analogy.
Step two is presenting the reality check. Research shows we need to run 26.2 miles in under 4 hours, which means we have to run a 9-minute mile average.
The facts define the magnitude of the effort required. You can't argue with them.
So what happens if you skip this step? If you jump from we want a car to we need to save £400 a month?
The solution step 4 appears arbitrary. Or worse, excessive. Alex might feel Maya is just over-dictating the budget based on her personal preference.
But when the 400 pounds is mathematically derived from the external neutral fact of the 4,000 pound down payment over a 10-month period,
The solution becomes logical and necessary, not dictatorial.
this step makes the problem solvable. It converts all that anxiety and fear into a simple engineering problem.
4,000 pounds divided by 10 months equals 400 pounds. That mathematical clarity is incredibly calming for people who struggle with financial vagueness.
And this is where the conversation needs a little bit of patience, right? This is the moment to share the research.
Yes. Why 4,000 pounds? Does it reduce the interest rate? Does it increase their borrowing power? Presenting the full context validates the severity of the hurdle.
Okay, which leads to step 3. Express the need for alignment, the team call.
After presenting the facts, Maya immediately pivots to collaboration. I really think we need to be on the same page about how we're going to get there. This step is the crucial bridge that keeps the emotional tone positive before they dive into the nitty-gritty implementation details.
So why must the step come before the solution? Why not just jump to the solution?
Because proposing a concrete solution, that's step 4, without seeking alignment first, is the fastest way to generate passive resistance. If Maya just said, we need 4,000 pounds, so I opened a joint account and set up automatic transfers, Alex might intellectually agree, but emotionally he'd resent being dictated to.
It wouldn't feel like his plan.
Not at all. This step explicitly asks for a meeting of minds. It validates Alex's prior admission about struggling with saving. It essentially says, because you struggle with temptation and I am highly organized, we need to agree on a system that satisfies both of our needs.
It's a system design check-in.
Exactly. It ensures that the proposed solution, when it arrives, is welcomed as a shared creation rather than a mandated rule.
And it also gives Alex the opportunity to raise objections or suggest alternatives before the system is deployed.
Yes. For example, he might say, I agree we need alignment, but I can only afford 150 pounds a month, not 200 pounds. This check-in allows them to adjust the parameters together.
And the consequence of skipping this step is just massive internal friction.
Huge. The partner who didn't feel consulted often sabotages the plan later. Sometimes it's subconscious. They might move funds back out of the joint account or simply fail to maintain the spirit of the collaboration.
Which leads us logically and smoothly to the final step. Step 4. Propose a concrete collaborative solution.
This is the action item. They didn't just recognize the problem and then say, let's sleep on it.
Right.
Maya immediately proposes the mechanism, the idea to pool their money into a new separate savings account.
And the solution has to be concrete and proposed immediately to maintain that forward momentum.
If you don't, the conversation can just stall in anxiety or procrastination.
And the solution must also be collaborative, as you said, meaning it addresses both of their needs.
The pooling mechanism addresses Alex's need for low visibility and Maya's need for structure and automation. It's the implementation intention.
Since we agree on the 4,000-pound hurdle X, we will immediately open a joint account. Why?
That specificity is vital. A solution that isn't concrete is just another vague aspiration.
So, by following this 4-step sequence, Maya and Alex ensured emotional buy-in, established objective reality, secured relational alignment, and finally,
Implemented a system designed for maximum success.
okay, so let's move into a deep dive of that solution itself, because this is where the behavioral design of the system truly shines. This mechanism, the separate joint account, is powerful because it directly addresses the psychological hurdles of saving.
This is the core behavioral strategy. They are designing a system that works around Alex's human weaknesses. It's designed to neutralize temptation by creating structural friction.
So let's discuss the psychological win of the separate account strategy. Why is opening a new separate account so much more effective than just, trying to label funds within their existing accounts?
This speaks directly to something called mental accounting theory. In our brains, we segment money.
We put it in different buckets.
Exactly. And if the car savings money is mixed in with the money you use for rent, groceries, and social life, that is, money in the main spending bucket, the brain views the savings portion as available surplus.
So it's mentally categorized as ready to be spent if a good opportunity, like a sale or a trip, comes along.
Right. But the separate account, physically and mentally, moves that money into a distinct car fund bucket. And once money is placed in that specific mental account, the psychological barrier to pulling it out for an unrelated purpose is enormous.
It's no longer just money, it's car money.
Precisely. And then there's friction theory.
Okay, break that down for us. What does friction mean in this context?
The ease of moving money dictates the likelihood of spending it. If the money sits in Alex's main account, the friction required to spend it is basically zero. It's a single click on his phone.
But if the money is in a separate joint savings account, that might require a transfer to the checking account, maybe a shared sign-off, or even just a different login.
The friction increases significantly, and that added friction is often enough to derail the impulse spend.
And we have to remember Alex's specific admission. The money isn't just sitting in my main account, tempting me to spend it. The system is customized to his specific behavioral need.
And look at his acceptance. He says, a separate account. That's actually a brilliant idea.
The genius isn't just the account itself, but the recognition that the solution must protect the partner from their own impulses.
Absolutely. The responsibility moves from I must use willpower daily to resist temptation to the automated system and the structural friction resist temptation for me.
That's the highest level of financial planning, really.
It is. Designing automation and infrastructure that support good decisions so you eliminate the need for constant, exhausting self-control.
So once that behavioral hurdle is cleared, they move into the automation and the math. The plan is surgically precise. Each partner transfers an agreed amount, £200 each, on the first day of every month.
Specificity and automation are the twin engines of success here. They chose automation because it turns the decision to save into a default setting.
Saving becomes a habit stacker. It happens automatically before they have the chance to spend the money on anything else.
Right. They don't have to rely on remembering to save on the 15th or hoping they have money left over on the 30th.
And the math is immediately clear and motivating. £200 from Maya plus £200 from Alex equals £400 a month combined.
And that predictable combined amount creates immediate certainty.
And that certainty is the key to managing financial anxiety.
Absolutely. Knowing that £400 is guaranteed every single month, they can immediately project the end date with precision.
So given the £4,000 down payment target, the clarity of the timeline just emerges. The goal is achieved in 10 months.
10 months. That's a tangible countdown. It's not sometime next year or when we feel rich.
It's a specific date on a calendar.
And that specificity fuels commitment and ongoing motivation. It moves the goal from just an aspiration to a real expectation.
We should also probably analyze the amount they chose, £200 each.
Yes, this is where the concept of the pain threshold comes into play.
What do you mean?
If they had chosen, say, £800 each, the immediate painful lifestyle change might have caused them to quit after 2 months. They would suffer from deprivation fatigue.
But £200 is significant enough to make an impact.
It gets them £400 a month combined.
But it's likely below the threshold of constant daily pain.
Exactly. The key to sustainable savings is finding that sweet spot between being impactful and being bearable.
And the equal distribution, £200 each, is also vital for that collaborative spirit.
It ensures neither partner feels overburdened. If Maya earned significantly more and volunteered to pay £350 while Alex paid £50,
It could quickly lead to resentment or a feeling of dependency for Alex.
it would undermine the shared nature of the goal. Equal effort, when it's possible, reinforces collaboration.
And this consistent, measurable progress then leads naturally to the collaborative outcome, which is the emotional payoff for all this structured communication.
It is.
The goal becomes observable. My notes, we can watch it grow together.
And that's a huge shift. Savings are no longer a solitary, difficult chore, but a shared team effort with a visible scoreboard,
So every time they check that dedicated account, they get a little burst of positive feedback.
confirming that the system is working and their communication structure is effective.
That shift from vague anxiety to tangible excitement is the defining hallmark of a successful financial conversation.
They didn't just solve a money problem. They practiced and mastered a repeatable communication process that builds trust.
And this process can now be applied to the next goal saving for a house deposit, planning a major trip, funding retirement.
They have strengthened the muscle of financial collaboration.
And Alex confirms the success at the end. He agrees, and he's excited to be on the same page and commit to this tangible plan.
That sense of excitement is the antidote to the fear and stress that usually comes with discussions about money.
By setting the structure right, they ensured the feelings at the end were positive and motivational.
Absolutely.
So this deep dive, it's really provided us with an incredibly detailed, practical blueprint for mastering shared financial goals, all thanks to the Maya and Alex case study.
Let's try to summarize the anchor points for you, the learner. Master the 3 high-leverage vocabulary terms. down payment,
The concrete hurdle,
the pool money,
the collaborative mechanism,
and to be on the same page.
the relational alignment.
These are the verbal tools you need to define the reality and the solution.
And the structure's everything. Remember the 4 steps and remember them in sequence. State the shared positive goal first, present the factual challenge, the specific number second, demand relational alignment third, and then immediately propose a concrete automated behavioral solution fourth.
And that sequence avoids blame and it maximizes cooperation.
As this analysis shows, talking about money when you do it correctly is fundamentally about communication, trust, and designing systems that protect us from our own human frailties.
The skills Maya and Alex used, using facts to externalize the problem, seeking alignment, designing a system like the separate account that respects behavioral differences, these are highly transferable.
So what does this all mean for you? The core lesson Maya and Alex mastered was removing temptation by separating resources, by putting the car money into a dedicated, separate joint account.
And this idea of separating resources to ensure an abstract goal becomes a concrete achievement. I mean, that's a universal success strategy. It's not just for cash.
It applies to time, focus, and energy.
It really does.
So think about this as your final challenge. Since the solution relied on ring-fencing capital for a specific purpose, how can you apply the principle of separating resources to other major areas of your life?
I like that.
I mean, if you have a goal to learn a new language, are you setting aside dedicated language time that is untouchable by emails or chores?
And if you have a goal to start a business with your partner, are you pooling resources like decision-making bandwidth or dedicated research time away from all the daily noise?
So the question is, what else can you pool besides money, be it time, accountability, or cognitive bandwidth, to reach a shared life goal with structure and certainty?
Take that blueprint, apply the structure, and remember that collaboration fueled by specific action is the ultimate accelerant for any major goal.
Until next time, keep practicing, keep talking, and stay fiercely curious about the systems that govern your life.